It is 5. Okay. It is 5:30, so we'll get started. Welcome. We're just so glad to have you here tonight. We're going to have a great presentation tonight by Tiffany Petry. I just would ask you to please mute your mics for the duration of the presentation. We're going to open up for questions afterwards. And feel free to use the chat box to ask questions. We'll read them out at the end as well. We will be recording this session and it will be made available afterwards on our Diversity in Water Speaker Series YouTube. And if you would, and if you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the comments. So tell us your name and where you're from, where you go to school, where you work, and just get acquainted. So with that, we're just going to briefly talk about some of the groups that are involved here. So I will turn this over to Savina to talk about what the Diversity Committee does.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So the Diversity Committee has partnered with the Young Professionals Committee and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Essentially, we welcome everyone who is part of the water community to proactively promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in their workplaces and just generally in their lives. We have monthly meetings that we highly encourage anyone who's interested in being part of the committee to join. And we're excited to bring this diversity series to you. The purpose is really to celebrate the unique identities and expertise that we find here in Ohio. And we hope that you enjoy this session. I'll hand it over to Megan. Thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. Advance. So for those of you who don't know, Ohio AWWA Young Professionals is a great organization to get involved with. A young professional is typically someone who's 35 years old or younger, or has been in the industry for less than 10 years, but we don't really care. Like, if you want to get involved, get involved. We have most, if not all, really all of our events are open just to anyone, regardless of age or experience level. We do all sorts of activities like water plant tours, wastewater plant tours, hockey games. We've gone, at least in my district, to the Cincinnati Zoo and gone on a sustainability tour, happy hours, just a lot of different ways to get involved and just see things around your area. So we have different districts. I am one of the co-representatives for the Southwest District, so around Dayton, Cincinnati area, putting on events. It's just been really great, and it's a really great way just to meet people and just get involved. So I would highly encourage you to do so, and I'm happy to talk to you about it if you're interested. Just wanted to briefly mention this is the team that puts together these webinars. Sadly, Julie is going to be leaving us after this event because she's going to go do her postdoc in Switzerland. So I just wanted to say a brief thank you to Julie for all the hard work she's done on the team, and that she'll be missed, and to enjoy Switzerland. All right. And without further ado, I will introduce our speaker extraordinaire for the evening. Tiffany Petry is the Water and Sewer Superintendent for the City of Englewood. She began her career with the city as a part-time operator, an opportunity made possible by the local vocational school. Tiffany would assist in the operation and maintenance of the city's water and wastewater treatment facilities and was enrolled at the local community college. In 2011, Tiffany was offered a full-time position as a plant operator with the City of Englewood. To better align with her new working schedule, to which she switched to taking online classes. At the same time, she signed herself up for prep work to study for Ohio EPA's Class 1 wastewater treatment exam. In 2015, she briefly served as a laboratory technician until she was promoted to plant superintendent. She has a bachelor's degree in business administration from Franklin University and has dual class 3 certifications from Ohio EPA in both water and wastewater. Her passion for the environment stems from childhood camping trips with her family and time spent in the vocational school. She's an excellent example of someone who entered the industry at a young age, worked very hard, earned her certifications, and was promoted to a position of leadership in the water and wastewater industry. So Tiffany, we're so thrilled to have you here. I'm gonna stop sharing my slides and let you share yours, and we'll get rolling.
All right, thank you, Megan. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And you can see my slides okay?
Megan, I think you're still sharing.
Did the pause share? How do I? Okay, here we go. That should work. All right. How's that?
Perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Set up here. Oops. Okay. Hello, my name is Tiffany Petry, plant superintendent with the city of Inglewood. I'm excited to be presenting today because I hope I can provide some insider knowledge and guidance as you start your career in the water and sewer industry. I also hope this encourages you to look more closely at this field if you're on the fence as to whether or not this is something you want to do. We can't control certain things about ourselves, age being one of them. Fortunately for a lot of newcomers, I found it takes more than just job experience to make the perfect candidate. Personal character is as important, if not more important, than understanding the technical aspects of the field. I personally have hired multiple people that had little to absolutely no experience. And then they, of course, tend to be from the younger generation. You know, what I found in the younger crowd is an outstanding work ethic and positive attitude. And I would take that any day over someone with experience, but who's maybe a little hard to work with. With that being said, I did start at a young age. I still have a lot to learn myself and room to grow. This presentation is going to be a little one-sided, but hopefully my experience can give you a good idea of what to expect as a young professional in the water and sewer industry. I'd like to use this time to discuss how I got here, the struggles of becoming a young leader, the rewards to being on top, some tips and tricks I've learned along the way, and how you can get started. And I have to share this picture. This picture was taken about the second week I started as a part-timer, so I was 17. And this was taken about 13 years ago. I'm sure you can do the math. It was taken on top of a silo that overlooked the entire wastewater plant. And if anyone is wondering who took this picture, it was this guy. His name is Curtis, and it was extremely cold that day, but it's never too cold for a good photo op. So, okay, Tiffany Petry on paper. These are the credentials that kind of make up the base of my resume. As you know, I'm the water and sewer superintendent for the city of Inglewood. Inglewood is very unique in the sense that I oversee both the water and sewer plants. My team of operators also work at both facilities as well. So everyone's a little cross-trained. Oftentimes, you know, at the larger facilities, it's usually one or the other, like you would work only at the water plant or only at the wastewater plant. The benefit of doing both is that you get your experience time in for both, water and sewer, which you need for EPA certification. As plant superintendent, I'm responsible for all administrative duties, including office management, handling personnel issues, such as hiring new operators and unfortunately firing the bad ones, ordering chemicals and supplies. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm also responsible for submitting the monthly operating reports. Basically, these reports include all of the data and test results from samples collected throughout the month. They then get submitted to the EPA, and then that's how the EPA knows how well, or sometimes not so well, you've done at maintaining your permit. This also makes me responsible for ensuring that both facilities are running smooth, so I don't have to turn in a bad report. Managing plant operations is probably the most important job that I do. Even more so on the drinking water side, because you really have to be right 100% of the time, because you're ultimately dealing with the health and well-being of others. I take this role extremely seriously, and I expect my operators to take it extremely seriously. And I kind of contribute, how serious I take it to my overall success. So I received my class 3 in wastewater in 2016. There's actually kind of a funny story about how I got my class 3. I was lab tech at the time and working with one of the part-timers. His name was Isaac. And I think I was showing him how to run the CBOD test on wastewater. And then all of a sudden the door flies open and my boss walks inside, immediately followed by his boss. They went into the office and closed the door. Fortunately for us, the door has a glass panel so we could see what was going on inside, and it did not look like anyone was having a good time. Isaac made the comment of, hey, they're taking things off the wall. What does that mean? And then I said, well, basically that can probably only mean one thing. Long story short, the city manager came down that afternoon after everything was said and done and asked if anyone else had the certifications needed to take over. It just so happened that the week before I had finally had enough time in to sit for my class 3. And then, of course, the rest is history. I earned my class 3 water certification just this year. Our operating ratio is 75% wastewater, 25% water, which means that out of an 8-hour day, I spend 6 hours working on wastewater duties and 2 hours working on water duties. It took me longer to earn a class 3 water certification because it took longer to earn the experience time. And then, of course, I have my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. This is probably the certification I'm most proud of because it took me about 10 years to earn my associate's degree from Sinclair Community College. While I was working full-time, I didn't really feel the need to pursue it hard because I was already moving up in the ranks at the city. It was kind of after I had my bearings as plant superintendent that I really started to consider going back to school. And, it's literally one of the best things I've done for myself. I've learned a lot. I didn't really have experience as a manager, but the classes I took really helped me understand the importance of doing certain things. For example, I took a business writing class. Before the class, my emails would basically be novels. And then, spend all this time writing them, and I would get about 3-word replies back, and I'd get a little upset. But then what I learned is, people are busy. They don't have time, nor probably the desire to read a drawn-out explanation that could have been said in about 2 sentences. So I strongly believe that business writing is a form of art. My career at a glance. So I started at the city in 2008. I was in high school at the time and part of the co-op program, which means I'd go to school half day and then work the other half of the day. As a co-op student, I would help the operators with the maintenance and other tasks at the wastewater plant. You couldn't really be involved on the water side of things if you're just a part-timer. They kind of made you prove yourself a little bit first. Actually, even our full-timers now start at the wastewater plant, so I can kind of gauge their working habits before I cut them loose on water duties. Because again, you have to be right 100% of the time. I almost didn't make it through my first year as a part-timer because one of my friends started working at Tim Hortons and I wanted to quit the city so bad so I could go work with her. I mean, at the time, that was my dream job. And my dad said, absolutely no way are you giving up on this opportunity. You don't know where it's going to lead you. And although I think I would have enjoyed it more, I'm glad I listened to him. I worked part-time for a few years, and then I was promoted to full-time in 2011. I was actually the second shift operator and worked Sunday through Thursday. A lot of people don't like to work on the weekends, but I actually enjoyed it because I would make all of my appointments for Fridays. Oftentimes, starting out in the field, you're going to be working the night and weekend shifts because the more senior operators typically get first pick, and they, of course, want Monday through Friday. You kind of have to pay your dues a little bit when you're first starting out, but then again, that's pretty typical of any career field. It's kind of just the way it goes. I did a very short stint as lab tech in 2015 to 2016. It's funny because as a part-timer, that's all I wanted to do. I mean, that was my main goal working there, was to become the lab tech one day. I mean, other than making donuts, that's what I wanted to do. As the lab tech, I was responsible for the in-house testing we performed on the water and sewer samples. It was, pretty run-of-the-mill tests like CVODs, ammonia, total suspended solids. We had a contract lab in town that would, and actually we still do, submit more of the labor-intensive tests like mercuries and total phosphorus. To this day, I still think the lab tech position is the best position in the city. And of course, you all know my current job title. I was promoted in 2016 at 25 years old. The previous superintendents were all in their 50s. So of course I was a little intimidated, like maybe I can't do this. Do I know enough to do this? But I figured if I was going to be given a shot, then I was going to prove that I could do it. 5 years later, I'm still here. So maybe something's going right. All jokes aside, I do think it's important to note that you're not allowed to just run plants the way you want. The Ohio Revised Code has pretty strict rules you have to follow, or you'll be in violation. Of course, if you're in violation too many times or it's something severe, like what happened in Flint, Michigan, with the lead crisis, you can be held personally responsible. That's why I take my job so seriously. And this field absolutely needs young professionals so we can keep raising the standards. I mean, there's issues that pop up all the time. Past practices are affecting our current operations. For example, PFAs, the forever chemicals that have contaminated some water supplies. Luckily, Inglewood's source water is not affected, but many places in Ohio are. I mean, we really need fresh new faces to help deal with new problems. Okay, so I want to talk about the importance of writing your goals down and how that's helped me stay focused on, my 5-year plan. So when I became superintendent and finally took over the office, I was really proud of myself. I had just passed my class 3. I was being trusted with, pretty big responsibility, a pretty big operating budget. I thought, okay, I've made it. this is as high as I can go at this plant. And then immediately following that thought, I had this overwhelming feeling of, okay, but what's next? You know, where do I go from here? You know, that's when I took out my notebook. It's actually the same one that I've written, you know, a lot of stuff down in since high school, and wrote down my 5-year plan. You know, by the time I turned 32, I wanted to have my class 4 wastewater, you know, my class 3 water, and my bachelor's degree. I've done all of those except my, you know, class 4 wastewater, which I'm actually currently working on. You know, just starting the process, researching, starting with the easy topics first, like outlining my experience. There's also a section that involves the, you know, publications and things that I've been a part of, and I'll probably use this presentation as one of them. You're in, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, maybe I should be this is actually a pretty heavy question for me. I used to struggle with this, you know, quite a bit. I used to think I was in the wrong field. You know, even after I became superintendent, I think, you know, I'm pretty driven. So if I'm not conquering something, then you know, I feel like I'm not really doing anything, which again is a pretty heavy feeling for me. You know, it's kind of like staying on top of a mountain and realizing you've run out of places to go. So you can either sit there, you know, and enjoy what you've worked so hard for, or go back down and start over. About 2 years in, I thought about starting over in another field completely. You know, I went as far as touring a nursing school. So technically, I guess I was willing to, you know, climb down if it meant that I could accomplish something else. Of course, it was a huge decision to make. So I started reaching out to friends and colleagues, you know, for their advice to see if they've ever experienced anything like this. And as it turned out, I wasn't the only person who felt like this. You know, you're going to hit plateaus in your career. You're going to hit, you know, plateaus in life. But, you know, the very definition of a plateau is a stretch of little to no growth. And it's important to stay the course and really, you know, dissect those feelings before you make a huge life change. And then the grass is green where you water it. You need to be investing in yourself. One of the things that you can do to get out of the rut is to maybe take a class or get involved with something, you know, kind of like this series. You're interested in this field for a reason. Keep coming back to that and grow it. You know, one of the things I like most about my job is that each year I'm required to earn, you know, continued education units that I need to renew my certifications. It's kind of the same concept that teachers or nurses will go through. And it's just a way for you to stay up to date in your field, to kind of learn about new technologies coming out or tried and true treatment processes. I like the classes because I always feel like I learned something new. For example, I took a class last year on chlorine disinfection, and the history behind it is really fascinating. Like, I never knew that one of the first uses of chlorine as a disinfectant in the United States, you know, because Europe was always ahead of us, was a cattle yard in New Jersey. Long story short, the cattle were getting sick from drinking water from the bubbly river, which actually got its name, and that's a whole nother story. But the cattle were getting sick, so the yard owner started giving them city water, which wasn't disinfected at the time, but didn't have the same contaminants. And when the cows were on city water, they were gaining weight and, of course, not dying. So at that point, they made the decision to start treating the river water with, I believe it was chloride of lime, you know, at the time that was used as a disinfectant. And then the cows lived happily ever after. So, or at least until they went to the butcher. Speaking of classes, I'll roll into my next point. And this one is kind of important to me, but oftentimes you actually do owe it to your employer to stay with them for a little bit, because just like you're investing in yourself, they're investing in you. Give them time to invest in you. And when they do, give them time to reap the benefits of, their investment. For example, Inglewood pays for our CEU classes, and that can get pretty expensive. They could just say, you have to get these because your certifications are a condition of your employment. But they don't. They offer to pay for it. And I think that's pretty typical with most facilities. It's kind of frustrating to hire new employees that don't stay very long. For example, when you factor in, uniforms and PPE like steel-toed boots and training, it takes about $1,500 to hire a new employee. And that's equivalent to a pretty decent paycheck. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be tied to your employer for the rest of your career, but I think it's important to make sure that you give them and the position a fair shot. I'm also not saying that you can't accept better opportunities when they present themselves, but just be careful and make sure you're making calculated moves. It looks not so great on job resumes when you are kind of jumping around. Just make sure if and when you do change employers, it's for an improvement or a better opportunity, not just a lateral move. The struggles. I'd like to discuss some of the struggles I've endured starting at a young age. I think it's important to remember that just because you may be struggling, it definitely does not mean that you are failing. You are going to go through growing pains in your career. That's normal. Embrace them, learn from them, and move on. One of the hardest things that I went through was my transition from friend and coworker to the boss. I had worked alongside these people for many years, but then found myself in a supervisory position. What I found is that some people can have very predetermined ideas of what a boss is. I've always considered my boss to be the leader. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do what you say because you're the boss. But sometimes bosses are viewed more as like a dictator, if you will, or, the person that kind of keeps you from doing the things the way that you would do them. My advice to you is to let people know you're here to lead and support, not pull them along kicking and screaming. It's important to let people know that their opinion matters. But then again, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make the decisions and own the outcome, whether it was right or wrong. Another hard issue is being labeled as young and dumb. No matter how good you are, how smart you are, how driven you are, some people will look at your age first and your credentials second. How you present yourself helps to change this perception. Like, okay, yes, I'm young, but I'm also a professional and I'm dependable. And when I don't have an experience, I make up for an attitude and willingness to learn. Again, personal character can trump experience. Not being taken seriously goes along with being labeled as young and dumb. But I do have an example I'd like to share. As the plant superintendent, I'm responsible for all treatment processes. Well, at the water plant, we wanted to add citywide softening. It was going to be a major installation, consisting of a new building, new tanks, new pumps, programs, the works. Everything was installed and working smooth until it wasn't. I reached out to the company multiple times to help address some of the issues. I knew what the problem was, but felt like I wasn't being taken seriously. It went as far as the company flying in someone from Belgium in the middle of a pandemic to cross-check my troubleshooting skills. Long story short, the lack of confidence in my ability turned into, an additional 8 months of headache. Times like this can be extremely frustrating. So my advice is to, keep yourself organized, document everything, and keep at it even when you think no one is listening. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if they don't want to take you seriously, then make them. And I've also struggled with being a little impatient. So let's be honest, we're part of the generation that needs instant gratification. No shame in that. I myself like to see instant results to the work I put into things. One thing I've learned about myself again is that I'm extremely impatient, and that can make for a bad leader. You have to realize that people are never really 100% on the same page as you. So a good manager should support and encourage, not talk down to or become impatient when others need help. A good thing to remember is you're really only as good as your weakest employee. And then lack of management experience. So something else I really struggled with when I became a leader at a young age was my lack of management experience. Everyone thinks that they can do a better job than their boss, and myself included in that, until it becomes your responsibility. Managing the treatment process, is easy. It's basically just a little fancy math. Managing people is the hard part. I've heard that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses, and you try not to take it personally, but it does hurt. You don't stop being human. It's natural to want people to like you, but that's not always possible. To help, it's a good idea to maybe take some classes or to talk with other managers on how to deal with certain issues. I like to call my experience of becoming a superintendent at a young age a little bit like baptism under fire, which really isn't the best way to go, because managing is a skill that really needs to be cultivated like any other skill. Okay, now on to the rewards, which are the resume builders. Becoming the go-to, and this is probably my favorite. So I was sitting in a meeting with the city manager discussing the next steps to a project, and then all of a sudden the city manager looks at me and asks, well, what do you think? And typically my role in these meetings would be, more of a wallflower. I'd sit and I would take notes, and then I would kind of do a briefing on the meeting after and send it out. So when then he asked me, he's like, what do you think? I was like, are you talking to me? This is awesome. What a great feeling to become a part of the inside crowd, the decision maker. It was at that moment I knew that my boss was really starting to have faith in me, that my hard work was really paying off. It's still one of those moments I like to think back on. Setting the tone. This deals with the kind of work environment you as a leader can create. Will you create a positive atmosphere, or will you create a hostile one? Being self-aware and taking cues from those you lead is crucial to making sure the tone you set lends to a productive work environment. Here's where I need to tell on myself a little bit. I did have an employee once tell me that my mood directly impacted hers. And of course, I was like, well, why? I haven't yelled at you. I'm not that demanding. I don't feel like I'm asking for too much. I wouldn't tell you to do anything that I myself wouldn't be willing to do. So, I'm not sure how I'm affecting your work. And then she said, when you're on edge, we're all on edge. And it just clicked. It made sense. When my boss is having a bad day, I'm likely having one too. And as a leader, I don't want to put my guys through that. I want to be the rock. someone that they can trust to bring a problem to, you know, without fearing that they're going to get their, you know, heads bit off. Controlling your emotions and even your facial expressions when you're upset still kind of keeps that trust in your employees, and they know, okay, she's approachable. You know, she's here to help me first and then maybe get mad second. Now, I'm not saying that you have to agree with everything they do, you know, and they're going to mess up. It just happens. But they need to be able to come to you as a leader with a problem and know that you can provide the solution. Helping others reach their goals. Again, probably one of my favorite, you know, perks of being the boss. Whether it's getting their certifications, deciding to go back to school, or even advancing their careers. You know, I try not to hold grudges against people who are simply trying to better themselves, because aren't we all? You know, don't get me wrong, I've been pretty upset to lose some of the employees that I have. But then again, it's never been to worse off situations. You know, in my opinion, they're always advancing themselves. It's never just, I can't work here anymore, I've got to go do something else. With that being said, you know, they come, they get their certification, they become extremely employable. You know, maybe I should rethink this strategy. But again, you're only as strong as your weakest employee. So help them to become a force. In the long run, it makes it easier on you because you'll have a confident, well-trained, and motivated staff. And then, of course, the last topic, you know, goes without saying. Knowledge is security. Never stop building your resume. You never know when you'll need it. And tips and tricks, how to be taken seriously. You may be young, but don't let them count you out. You may have never been through a situation before, may have never dealt with a situation before, but that does not mean that you can't quickly get up to speed, quickly learn what's going on, quickly help form a solution. Don't let them count you out. If you're sitting in a meeting and maybe you don't understand what they're talking about this time around, as soon as you leave that meeting, go and research the topic. Go and look up certain facts. So at the next meeting, you can just blow them away with everything that you know. You know, you've taken the initiation to go out and learn, and they don't have to explain everything to you. So don't let them count you out. Prove that inexperience does not equal inability. You know, and this is huge. Kind of goes along with, you know, the topics that I just, or the you know, the topics I just discussed, but inexperience does not equal inability. You know, for example, not only did I help what in reality I acted as the general contractor for the water softener install. So, you know, I sat through all of the meetings. I was the general contractor for, you know, the equipment install, the program install. Had I ever done that before? No. You know, but I kept learning, I kept researching it, I kept documenting everything. And then as soon as it started to not work so great, I was able to, you know, figure out why, keep a logbook of what was going on. So really in the time span of less than a year, I had installed this, you know, $1 million system, more than that, really, $1 million system, proved that it didn't work, and then convinced the company that it didn't work, and then, you know, agreed upon a solution, and then reinstalled the same facility. Another thing, being young, you know, and a woman, people automatically assume that you're more emotional. So a big tip that I have is to control your emotions. It's just business. Don't take it too personally. It's usually almost never personal. So really just control your emotions, be professional. You know, if you're sitting in a meeting and or talking with your boss and he has something negative to say, I mean, don't get upset. Just of course when you go home you can get upset, but in that moment just kind of control your emotions. And then define your leadership style and own it. I mean, you've got to really decide how you're going to manage your facility, and once you decided what you want, then own it. And of course, put your time in. No one starts off as boss. I think this is pretty huge. And quite frankly, I don't know if you want to start off as boss, because you really need a base level of knowledge about the facility and your coworkers to really be successful. And then of course, when all else fails, work hard, be dependable, offer support, not criticism, and keep sight of your 5-year plan, because really at the end of the day, that's what's most important to you. So keep sight of that 5-year plan and keep working it. And then I wanted to go into a couple of career opportunities. I know I saw in the comment section that there were a lot of engineering students, which is amazing. You guys are super smart. I don't know how you do it. So kudos to you. There were some maintenance technicians. Like the list in this field can just go on and on of options for careers. So usually the water is broken up between water supply and water distribution. Water supply being the treatment facility, treatment processes, water distribution being, the water towers, pipes in the ground, booster stations, things like that. And then the wastewater field is also broken up into 2 categories: wastewater treatment and then wastewater collection, which would be like your sewers, your lift stations, things like that. And here's typically like an example of a local municipality's organizational structure. You usually have like a director, and then you might have a utility superintendent, and then oftentimes, unless like Inglewood, we do both, but oftentimes it's usually very broken up between water discipline and then wastewater discipline. And then the mini job titles, which I actually kind of found this very funny. I just was searching other jobs and kind of, what other people or what other districts kind of call the certain positions. And I mean, they're pretty spread out, but they basically mean the same thing. You have your director, superintendent, utilities manager, chief plant operator. Those are kind of the guys at the top. You have your plant operators. I've also seen them being called environmental technicians, facility mechanics and maintainers, which maintainers was more of a distribution system term as far as like fixing water main breaks, things like that. Laboratory technician, you'll have your analyst, a field sampler, collector, pre-treatment specialist, and this could be anywhere, from a government wastewater plant, or it could be maybe for industry. There was actually quite a bit of job openings for industries for, water, sewer workers. Pump and equipment operators, system monitors, and the real heroes here are the heavy equipment operators, because I could not do that. And then getting started, just kind of wanted to share, where you can find some job openings, things, and maybe additional training. So I kind of have a bad habit of just Googling other job postings. Not that I plan on leaving Inglewood anytime soon. I do like to know what's out there, or maybe what my, my plant operators are looking at, kind of see how my facility is competing with others facilities for operators. So really just Google city of blank job postings. And a lot of times the municipalities will list the open positions on their website. The Ohio Water Environment Association has a job board that's very good as well. They have a lot of postings on there. There's actually quite a bit of industrial plant postings on that job board. And you know, that's anything from utilities manager to maybe plant operator to lab analyst. I mean, whatever you're interested in, the job board's probably going to have it come up every so often. So just keep an eye on that. And then of course, OCCO's website, they also have a job posting board, you know, that I'll check from time to time. And then where to find training. And this is just what kind of helped me the most as I was getting started. Start part-time while you complete your education. I know, you know, at our facility and a lot of facilities, you can work 20 hours a week. You can work maybe 10 hours a week, 5 hours a week. I mean, oftentimes I'm willing to take anybody, you know, you want to come down, maybe I'll show you how to sample some things. We'll paint some pipes, like, you know, anything to get you started. Because like I said, for your EPA certifications, you need experience time anyways. And then OFCO does offer a virtual and I think now classroom course. And I find that to be, in my opinion, the best test prep. And I'm talking about the EPA test. My operators have been very successful on the EPA exam after taking this OFCO course. And they offer it for, you know, basic water, basic wastewater, all the way up to advanced water, advanced wastewater. They also cover collection and distribution. So they offer classes for that as well. And of course, YouTube. So I use YouTube all the time. Hate to kind of admit that, but it's a great tool. Like I was trying to explain, for example, tower stratification to, you know, my boss the other day. And of course, you know, I'm not super great with words. So I literally sent him a YouTube video like, hey, check this out. This is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I've always found that YouTube is a great tool if you need like a really quick explanation on something. That's all I had. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. That was really great. That was awesome. I think that's probably the most comprehensive presentation I've ever seen given by an operator on kind of how they've gotten and for tips on how to get in the industry. So with that, I just wanted, with all the university students that are on here, I wanted to kind of put a quick plug in for, keep my video on so you can see me. Quick plug in, if you want to learn more about being an operator, we have a ton of stuff on the EPA website. Just go to epa.ohio.gov/ddagw/opcert. I'll put that in the comments. You could also email opcert@epa.ohio.gov. We have a hotline with if you have questions about becoming an operator. And there's like tons of information if you look under career information on our website. In case you're interested. And then I'm going to piggyback off of Tiffany. There's like a ton of videos on just different water topics from AWWA on YouTube, and some of them are, I mean, they're entertaining. So if you're kind of like interested in this career, but you can't really quite picture what am I actually going to be doing from day to day, that's a good place to check out and just kind of browse. And then Tiffany kind of went over this, but to become an operator, basically what you need is a high school or GED, operating experience from 6 months to 5 years, depending on your level of education and the level of certification you're going for. So for water, there's A, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So Tiffany's got class 3s in both water and wastewater, which is super impressive. And she had to get those, she had to pass a test for all those levels. And then basically, so this is something that you could actually do while you're going to school. Like if you worked part-time at a water or wastewater plant, you could get your time in while studying for the test. And then to maintain it, you'd essentially just get continuing educational hours and keep your certification renewed. So it's kind of sweet because I don't know if you could tell, but we're really, really recruiting operators. There's like a ton of people in the industry that are retiring. So we're really recruiting you. So yeah, absolutely. It's a great career field. I would recommend it to anyone. It's just really just a great industry. So yeah, so with that, I'm just kind of going to go in no particular order. I've got some questions that were submitted ahead of time for Tiffany, and then just keep them coming in the comments section if you have any other questions for her. All right, so Tiffany, the person said, I know you've been to Iceland. Was drinking water over there as good as ours?
So safety-wise, yes. Taste and odor, I mean, it's basically a volcano, so the sulfur smell, the rotten egg smell that you get from drinking water was really terrible. I drank a lot of bottled water when I was in Iceland.
All right. So kind of like with your role as a supervisor, do you have
Sorry.
Megan, I think we're losing you. We can't hear you. Okay, it seems like she's having trouble with her audio. I don't have access to the other questions that were asked, but we can go to the questions that were in the chat. So the first question here is from Ari. He asks, how are you, well, he says, I feel to help with controlling how you show up, I often just pause and take a breath and then respond. It helps. And so he asks, I work in operations. How are you empowering future operators to upskill where you work?
So oftentimes I really encourage the operators. Like I said, I've hired multiple people without any experience at all. And I know at Inglewood, you have a year and 4 months, and then to get a year and 4 months to get your wastewater certification, and then 4 years to get your water certification. And nothing against my supervisor when I started, but it was kind of like sink or swim. If you want to keep your job, these are the certifications that you're required to get. You know, and it seems very easy and non-complicated when you've been in the field for a while, but you know, it really is complicated, and it's kind of hard to understand how to get there. So every new hire that I get, I spend a lot of time with them, a lot of training with them. I sign them up for the classes myself. I'm not going to just let them kind of paddle in water. I really, you know, I wish that I had that support, so I want to make sure I give that support. And that's kind of, you know, how I kind of ensure that other people are successful too, because that's really what I want.
Wow, that's great. So you kind of mentor them and kind of hold their hands to that process, so it's not as ambiguous as it was for you.
Correct, yes.
That's awesome. Ari had another question, which is, what do you love the most about your job now?
What do I love most about my job now? I think that the softener install was probably the most, my most favorite project that I've ever done, because like I said, I had absolutely zero experience with softening. So I just learned, a ton of information, and I was extremely hands-on with that project. As far as helping to design the control panel to wiring some things myself, I mean, I was super hands-on, and, I can, sit at a desk and I can do the desk work, and, that's fine, but I eventually go stir crazy. So I like that I can still kind of get out there and get my hands, dirty. I need that.
Yeah, you need that balance for sure. It's awesome that you can do that. The next question is actually for me, and I encourage everyone else who's on this webinar to please submit your questions in the chat. And if you prefer, we can also open it up to you asking the question yourself. But the next question here is, do you have any insight to share on how to attract and retain new generation of talent, particularly Gen Z?
Yes. So, like I said, I've hired very young operators. I think the youngest being 18 years old.
Wow.
And as soon as they start, I'm like, you better be sending your friends my way. I want to know them, have them call me, have them email me. You got any friends that want to be part-timers? I mean, I really just kind of push them. And I've had a lot of referrals from just people's friends,
That's great. That's really great. There's some, I guess, stereotypes that come off from like as they did for other generations as well, with the millennials is like, all right, your head is in the clouds. And then for the Gen Zers, it's like kind of like part of also instant gratification in a sense. And so I've heard some folks struggle with that, is they don't know how to kind of create that, instant like carrot in a sense.
One of the, exceptional things about the Gen Z is that they were raised with technology. So when I hand you an iPad and say, hey, your entire system is on this iPad, it's very little training. If I hand that iPad to somebody who's been in the field a little longer, I mean, I have to teach them how to log on to it, which is fine. I'll do that. But just being able to kind of bridge that technological gap is huge.
Yeah. And then, in the same vein is, have you had any challenges around intergenerational communications? And if so, how have you overcome them?
I don't know if it's been so much as, a challenge around, like, for example, all of my supervisors, which would be the director of public utilities and then the city manager, they're all they're, older than me, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, I've struggled more with trying to communicate with them because, I almost want to overdo it a little bit and it kind of come off as a little stuffy, maybe. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I'm trying to overcompensate, I guess, for the age difference. So that's what I've struggled with. But as far as, communicating with the younger operators, I mean, that actually goes really well. They prefer texting and I love it because it's real, short and sweet. So yeah, I mean, the younger generation really is something else.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we have 1 minute, but if folks are willing to stay on for a few more minutes and want to ask a question, we welcome you to come forward.
Let's see, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sweet. Great. Yeah, I just exited out. I don't know what the problem was. Like it was unmuted. But do we want to do our photo real quick? And then whoever can stay on, we'll have more questions.
Yeah, sure. So we need folks to turn on their cameras if they're willing and able.
We call this, it's like family photo. All right, let me see if I can get this. All right, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Oh, beautiful. Awesome. All right, let me get back here. Okay. So somebody asked, I think you kind of got into this, Tiffany. Would you say that your job is more field work or office work? Like, what would you say is kind of like the balance, like 50-50, 40-60?
I would say it's mostly, 50-50. And that's, I think, just because it's a smaller facility. My job title at maybe a larger facility, I probably would do a lot of office paperwork, but, I'm kind of short staffed, so I really have to get out there sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely like a lot of time with just like doing overall planning stuff too, and like what's the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So you've got, your 5-year plan for yourself, but you also have your 5-year plan for your water system too, right?
Absolutely.
And your 10 and 15 and all that. Let's see, I may have missed this one while I was out. So if this has already been asked, we'll move on. It said, I work in operations. How are you empowering future operators to upskill where you work?
We already answered those questions in the chat. Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Someone asked about communicating and interacting with hard to reach populations. So I think they're referring more to harder to reach populations within your distribution system or your customers.
I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily an issue. I mean, the city has, the website where we post a lot of information on. We also have a Facebook page, I believe. I'm not on Facebook, so I'm not too sure. I know that the residents themselves have created like a some type of chat board that they can go and share information with. We have the annual consumer confidence report that's required to be, mailed to every resident. So a lot of communication is done through that, even if it's, snail mail. I feel like we have a pretty good handle on reaching the residents.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, how can we elevate voices of local, living, native, and indigenous of our region?
Ooh, I don't know if someone wants to help me out with that one.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. I think there's like a matter of awareness, but also making sure that they kind of have a say in the water system and have opportunities to really give feedback back to the water system. And somebody else want to help me out? We're writing down to the last few questions. My brain's kind of dead. There's more eloquent people than me on this call.
Yeah, I think this is just like you said, Megan. It's a hard question to kind of address, but I think there's the first place is, and I'm actually not very familiar with the native tribes in Ohio, but one thing that we could do is in our outreach is identify if there are any Native communities in our service area, and begin to have those conversations about their perceptions around the quality of water or even their quality of service, and begin building that bridge between the utility and the community. We do know that Black, Indigenous, and people of color are disproportionately impacted by water quality issues in the US, and Flint is like a classic example of it. And so it's really incumbent upon water utilities, in my humble opinion, to be those anchor institutions within their communities and reach out to those who are underrepresented.
Very well said, Sapna. I would say too, it's like, the Hamilton play, helping people be in the room where it happens, where decisions are made, and trying to have them be, you recruit them into the industry itself, because water is a community resource. So we're kind of the stewards of that resource. So awesome. I think that's a good question to leave off on. We have in November coming up, Mr. Ari Copeland. So we hope that you will join us on November 11th at 5:30 for our next presentation. And we're just very thankful that you came to be here with us tonight. So thank you again to Tiffany. Awesome presentation, and just thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. And for everyone who's interested in watching this video or sharing it, we'll have it on our YouTube channel as well.